Well, aloha and good morning. Thanks so much for tuning in here to Spotlight Hawaii. I'm Ryan Kalesuji, joined by Yunji Denise. So glad that you could start the week with us. And starting us off this week, Yunji is a guest who joined us a few times during the pandemic, and always we have a lot to talk to her about.
That's right. Joining us now live from her office is the head of the Department of Education, Dr. Christina Kishimoto, our superintendent. Thank you so much for being here this morning. As Ryan said, you've talked to us at various points throughout the pandemic, and we do appreciate your time. How do you feel the department is doing? And, Hawaii has a short summer. What are your thoughts as we head into the new school year?
So again, great being with you. Thanks for having me back again. I'm excited about the new school year. We've been able to announce that on August 3rd, we are opening up every school and opening up all of our programs, after school programs and sports, music, art programs, and so forth. It's really important after such a difficult year and a quarter away from the school site, away from normal schooling, to have our kids back with their peers, with their teachers, with their support staff and their teams, to be learning and fully engaged again. So I'm looking forward to reopening the school again in that manner.
Talk to us about what that will look like for students going in. Will there be any distancing measures that will be in place? What will the logistics look like for students as well as teachers as this re-entering of the classroom begins?
Yeah, so Ryan, that's a really important question because that everyone's wondering about, how far we're going to go with the reopening. We will be welcoming all students back, but we still have to take safety precautions. The governor's emergency proclamation, emergency orders are still in place. And so we're waiting for continued guidance from the Department of Health and his proclamations. So we will be opening with the safety precautions of stay at home if you're feeling ill. Masking will be mandated on school campuses. And we will continue to do hand washing and hand sanitizing. We will not be doing the kind of social distancing that we've required in the past in order to have all students back on campus. But this has been approved by the Department of Health. I hope that soon after the school year starts, we get a continued information and are able to start lifting the mask mandate, especially outdoors for outdoor play and outdoor time for students.
Given that students who are under 12 are not able to be vaccinated, at least not yet, hopefully sometime in late fall, that'll actually happen for those younger students. What are your concerns for that population? Do you think that maybe high schoolers will be able to stop wearing masks if they're vaccinated? Will you have any kind of proof of vaccination? Or, how do you navigate that when you have a population that cannot be vaccinated and then some campuses that can?
I think that what's really important is the kuleana we have as the adults, as the population 12 years old and older that have access to vaccines that are approved, to ensure that we have the majority of our population vaccinated. That creates a safe environment for our kids who are 12 and under, and allows the opportunity for everyone to be safe. We are not requiring students to show proof of their vaccination at this time. We are continuing to work with DOH around how to ensure that every step we take along the way is approved by them and is guided by the health experts. We have been able to vaccinate over 20,000 of our employees. We know that many of our employees have gotten vaccinations outside of the system we put in place through the DOE in partnership with DOH. And so we have a large percentage of our population that is vaccinated and will continue to do vaccinations now for 12 and older.
We have a question here. We always like to bring in those from the viewing public. Stephanie's asking, will distance learning still be an option for families who are concerned about having students back on campus? We know that the pandemic forced the DOE as well as other educational institutions to have to adopt this model of online learning. And some of that was beneficial in some ways to those who lived in remote communities. What are the plans moving forward for those who have questions like Stephanie and others who maybe just prefer to do more distance learning if given the option?
So the primary mode of instruction will be in person, face-to-face in schools during the school day. We know that we need to provide some opportunities for families that have someone who's ill at home, who's high risk, the child may be high risk, or the family back at home may be high risk. And so we will have those conversations between family and principal to see how schools can accommodate those requests. We are not doing necessarily a full distance learning option for every family. There are two reasons for that. One is many of our students, not all, but many of our students did not do well on distance learning and had a lot of challenges, and families are asking for that face-to-face in person. And so we want teachers at the helm teaching those students in school. The other is that there is no additional budget that we've received. In fact, we still don't have our full budget has been restored to us to be able to add teacher positions. I'm not sure that we could at this late stage add and recruit teachers, but we're not able to have teachers fully staffed in-person classrooms and staff distance learning. And we know how important it is to have a teacher doing the teaching, even when it's distance learning.
Okay, so on that point, just sort of following that, so what happens, this woman, Marie, is asking, what happens if you have parents that don't want to send their kids to school, especially the ones who have elementary age children? Of course, these are the ones who are not eligible for the vaccine. How do they start that conversation, and when should they start that conversation with their administrators?
Or they should be reaching out to their principals to see if there are options at that school or within the complex for distance learning or some kind of hybrid opportunity for the young person, and to review what options there are. We don't want students to disenroll for the district. At the same time, we don't want to provide a watered down curriculum because there's not a teacher available to do the distance learning. And that's really important. We see from our data, and we've shared it publicly so that parents can see that as well. When parents have gotten feedback about how their young person did via distance learning, we have a lot of students who struggled. We have a lot of families who are struggling. They're relying on schools for food security because things are so difficult in the economy. We also have wraparound supports. We have a lot of students in surveys who have indicated an increased amount from prior years that they're feeling sad, they're feeling disconnected. And so we are prioritizing that in person, knowing that we have to provide those wraparound services, and we have to have adults ensuring that students have what they need and families have what they need.
One of the concerns that the pandemic has also caused, and you mentioned many students having just a hard time learning from home. Are you at all concerned about their just overall ability and just readiness when they get back into the classroom, that there may be a sort of a delay in kind of getting these students back up to speed, being back in the classroom, being in an educational environment that may be tough and a challenge for this during this transitional period back into the classroom?
Oh, absolutely. We have students and families who have been living through a health pandemic and a health crisis. And so there's going to be, and we already see impacts on families at multiple levels, whether that's due to unemployment or food and housing insecurities. We have families right now of some of our kids who are not going to be able to stay in their rentals and are getting notices. So our families are still in crisis. And so we know there are going to be lots of needs that we don't even see yet until they're in school. This is why we rolled out the largest summer school we've ever rolled out in the state of Hawaii. We have about 25,000 students participating in summer school right now. And we've designed it differently so that there are engagement activities, there are opportunities for students to have fun and connect, because until they have fun and they're connecting and reconnecting, they're not going to be able to focus on learning. And we want to make sure that these students that participate in summer school have that opportunity for transition. But those who didn't, we may find there are a number of them that still need support. And so we're doing trauma-informed support and care, and we're doing transition support as they come back into the school.
We have so many questions from parents here, and it's so wonderful to have you. So let's talk a little bit about, when someone does test positive. Ashley wants to know, if a student or teacher tests positive with COVID and then are told to quarantine for 10 days, will those days absent still count for their child's attendance record? Parents are concerned about actions being taken against them. Let's start just at the beginning of sort of the premise of her question. Let's say a teacher or a student in a classroom tests positive. What happens then?
Yeah, so we have a very good protocol that's been reviewed by the CDC and our own Department of Health, and we'll continue to follow that. There's notification to everyone that possibly could have been exposed to anyone who's positive, and so that's happened all year long, that notification. We also provide guidance to those individuals about either going to get tested, and we have a number of programs throughout the state to allow for that testing and support. We also, as students need to stay home, either because they're positive or may have been exposed. No, they're not going to have that time away held against them. There are ways in which schools have already been working with students and families to make sure that they stay on track with their studies. Some of our schools are ready to do some additional support using telehealth, teletechnology, telelearning. And so we'll continue to leverage those resources to the greatest extent possible to make sure that our families are supported. We're still in this pandemic. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen with this transition. And so we will continue to work with and accommodate families to the greatest extent we can to make sure that students continue to learn and get the support they need. This is not about in any way being punitive. At the same time, we want to make sure that we know that students are well and we're staying connected with them.
In speaking with this topic of a positive case that may be reported on a school campus, we know that the governor actually vetoed a bill that would have disclosed the educational facility and area or school where that case was counted. Wanted to get your thoughts on that. You know, we heard the governor's response and his reasoning for that. But what are your thoughts overall on that process?
Yeah, so we've been working with the Department of Health around what kind of data disclosure is necessary to ensure public health, at the same time ensuring that the health privacy rights of individuals are honored. And this is really a balance between those things. We will continue to take our guidance from DOH. The important matter is that when there is the likelihood or potential of any kind of connection with someone or interaction with someone who is positive, we notify all of those individuals right away. We've done that for an entire year. For an entire year, we had no transmission on school campuses. And so our protocols work, and we've taken swift action all along. And so with those protocols working and still allowing for the privacy rights of individuals, that shows the careful balance there. At the same time, if there is different guidance that comes from Department of Health, we will adjust, and we've adjusted all year as we get new guidance.
There are a number of questions here from parents asking about mask requirements. Will they be required on campus at all times? What is the protocol for masks for students and then also for teachers and then other administrators, adults who are on campus?
Yeah, so this is not so straightforward as it may sound. We have just as many parents who want no mask as we have parents who want a mask. And so for now, as long as we're under the emergency order from the governor, we will mandate masks on our school grounds by everyone, student, adults alike. There are certain exceptions for health reasons, and those are carefully vetted. We will do social distancing to the extent possible while still having all students back on campus. As we get more guidance, we hope that, and as the emergency order is lifted, we hope that we will be able to have more time for students and adults on campus where they can get relief from having to wear a mask. We know that is a very difficult and challenging situation to be able to hear well, to be able to speak clearly, to be able to see facial expressions. That's all part of the social part of education that's important as well. And so we'll lift mandates as quickly as we can, as long as it's healthy and safe to do so.
You know, we know that public schools are a big part of just the overall community, and it is used more than just an educational facility and a place for students to learn, but many outside organizations utilize campus grounds, cafeterias, church groups. There are many different outside organizations that work with the department to utilize these facilities. When will those schools be reopened and allowed for use outside of this educational setting? Is that something that you folks are planning on reinstituting anytime soon?
Yeah, so we're an important part of in serving as a community resource, as you stated. We have already started inviting groups back as related and connected back to student programming. So programming for after school, before school, events during the summer, for summer camps, partnerships with our counties. They can use our facilities as well. So we've already started that. And so we'll just continue reopening as we move into the school year, as long as those conditions continue to change for the positive. We want our campuses fully utilized by our community partners, including churches. Our emergency personnel like fire department often use our campuses for training and so forth. And so that's a resource that's important to us.
Ashley Mizuo has a question here. She, of course, is part of the Star-Advertiser team here. And she says, what is the DOE doing to address students who were not as responsive during distance learning and have fallen behind academic and or socially? This follows up to a question that Ryan asked earlier about readiness. Are there any specific programs for students who have been identified and maybe who have not engaged in the summer programs that you outlined to make sure that everyone is up to speed? Because we know that when students feel like they've fallen too far behind, often they can drop out, especially at the higher levels, high school level, for instance. So are there specific programs or how are teachers taking this on? This must be a challenge for everyone because the learning experiences of the kids coming back are so varied.
Yes, a great question. And there are layered supports that we're putting in place. We are increasing the counseling services that we're providing. We are increasing the after-school programs for students, which is a great engagement program, which requires them to come to school so they can participate in after-school programming. We are also rolling out lots of learning hubs this summer that provides a great model for the way in which instruction can be delivered in a way that allows students to be much more hands-on, more community-based, much more around what engages students in order to bring them back on campus, make sure that they get the skill development and be able to catch up in the areas that they've lost ground on. We know that in one summer and even potentially 1 year, we're not going to catch everyone up depending on whether they were already behind before the pandemic. You heard me talk at a board meeting in the spring about we have 20 to 22,000 students in our school system who were already behind academically before the pandemic. And so those are the students I am most concerned with providing the wraparound supports and engagement for them. And that includes things like we've got to deliver work and instruction and supports differently. I've asked to use federal funding to provide tutoring and engagement programming in the evenings and on the weekends when families are home and can be with their child and make sure that they are participating. We've got to be much more flexible about when we're providing this. It's not just in the school day. We've got to provide an extended time period for students to engage in a very positive way with peers and their teachers.
Moments ago, you mentioned that there was a cut to the overall budget of the department and that you were hoping and waiting for that to be restored. I'm wondering if you can shed some light into this past legislative session. We know that there were other departments within the state that had saw significant cutbacks or proposals for termination of programs and services because of the impact of the pandemic to the overall state economy. There has been some federal support that has come through the pipeline that has been able to assist specifically some allocations for education. But can you paint a picture of what the budget looks like now for the Department of Education and moving forward as the new superintendent comes in? What are some of the challenges that continue to exist with the overall budget?
Well, I think this legislative session was extremely difficult and in many ways disappointing. And I'll speak to why it was disappointing. In the midst of a pandemic, the DOE had $100 million taken from kids. And that's the best way I can put it out very specifically. $100 million cut from our budget during a time when we needed more funding for devices, connectivity, food services, wraparound support, getting to isolated communities in different ways. We were spending more and we had $100 million cut. What was really disappointing was I was brought to the table and asked, can you spare $100 million up front? We will restore it. And at the end of the day, not only was it not restored, it was made a permanent cut. And that's disappointing because that's money that should be going to kids. We got $412 million of relief funds through ESSA 3. We are very appreciative of this, but we're catching up on unpaid bills. So whether that's workers' comps, the 24 million of additional funds we had to spend on food services. So a lot of unemployment insurance, a lot of areas that don't even get to instruction yet, just to make sure we are coming out of the school year with a balanced budget and going into next year maintaining a balanced budget. And so a lot of supplanting of federal funds for what should be part of our core budget. At the end of the year, we have about a $200 million cut to our budget still, and I'm hoping that with revenues increasing, that money will be restored to children, to their future, that money is put back. Another disappointing thing that happened early in the pandemic, I was brought in for 4 or 5 hearings. I was asked in some of these hearings to be in person, even though the entire state was shut down and the building at the Capitol was shut down. I showed up in person to talk about one thing. I need money for devices and connectivity for kids because the schools, buildings are shut down. After all 4 or 5 or so hearings, the legislature made a decision of $0 in the middle of a pandemic for devices and connectivity for kids. Thankfully, the governor came through and was able to provide us about $35 million to buy some of the additional devices, but we needed about $100 million. And so this has been an unusually difficult year when we really needed our influencers, our leaders, our decision makers to stand up for kids. And I don't know that from a policy perspective that I saw folks follow through in the way they should have for our children.
Given those budget constraints, and we know that the DOE already had teacher shortages before the pandemic, how is staffing right now? I know you mentioned that it would be hard to staff up more teachers to offer more remote learning possibilities, but how is that going in terms of the staffing, especially if you're $200 million short?
Yeah, so we are shifting priorities and making sure that at the school level, we are fully staffed. I have in the DOE just incredible capacity. We have great teachers, we have great principals, complex area superintendents, central office staff, data analysts. They work together. They've worked hand in hand, arms locked, working weekends, long hours to make sure that we could do everything we can for kids. We're making sure that the positions at the school level are staffed. We're in great shape with that. The fact that the Board of Ed allowed me to continue to provide the differentials, especially for our Hawaiian language immersion teachers and our special ed teachers, showed great returns where we didn't have the vacancies that we've had historically in those areas. That takes an investment of funds. It also takes a policy position that says we need to invest in these areas to make sure we have certified teachers in front of our students. But I also want to give a shout out to all the front office staff workers, those who came in to clean the buildings, maintain the buildings. That group of employees didn't distance work. They didn't telework. They were there every single day this year, and they were incredible. And I just thank them for what they did during a year where we needed all hands on deck, providing food, making sure things were clean and sanitized, just tremendous work. And so in terms of staffing, we're in great shape right now. I hope that continues to be true. I think we need to show all of our educators a lot of gratitude to keep them here too. That's part of retention, is showing them the gratitude for the tremendous work they did this school year.
One of the things that this pandemic did is it also highlighted the need for just the infrastructure as a whole and the technology aspect of it, with so many people working remotely. And we know from departments like the Department of Land and Industrial Relations that an adequated and just like an old system can present a lot of issues. And we know that the Department of Education is one of those systems that continues to operate on a very outdated system. If you can share with us some of the changes that have been made and are being made to help to update that. I mean, are you concerned at all about where the state is and the Department of Education is on that infrastructure standpoint moving forward into this next phase of learning?
Well, let me start by saying that I don't think you will ever have a great education system, not a good, not a mediocre, but a great education system if you don't also have the operationalized business functions of the house also in good order. And we've had an antiquated system. Just our financial management system is 30 plus years old, out of date. It crashed about 2 years ago. I've asked for the funding from the legislature for the past 2 years. I did not get that funding. And so I brought my team together and said, where can we find the money internally? Because we have to replace this system. And so I'm very excited that after 2 years of intensive work internally with my internal team, that I'm going to be able to go live with a new financial management system in 2 weeks. We also replaced a very outdated Lotus Note system that should have been gotten rid of in the state years ago. The DOE was still using Lotus Notes for its emails. We were probably, as a state, the only probably the only client left of Lotus Notes. We're now on a Google Suite system. We're modernized. We're doing things in the cloud. We've also partnered with the state on replacing the payroll system. The amount of modernization work we've done in the past 2 to 3 years is impressive. And it took a lot of work and a lot of everyone kind of coming together and saying, we've got to do this because we can't have outdated systems and then talk about innovation in education. We've got to have an innovative system in and out in all areas, including our operations.
You know, our time is almost up, but I want to get to this question from Stephanie because it's one that we wanted to ask as well, which is you're wrapping up, as you know, as we know, your time at the DOE, about a month left. But what are you most proud of looking back on your tenure as a superintendent? And is there anything that you feel like you wanted to accomplish that you weren't able to in that time?
Thanks, Yunji, for that question. I am most proud of my employees. I've been pushing them hard around thinking differently about how we deliver our work. What does innovation mean? What does it mean to go from a good system to a great system, an excellent system that's a national model and a global model for our kids that gives them pathways to success? And we've been talking about everything from school design to how we deliver more Aina-based instruction to how we bring pride in all the cultures that are part of who we are here in Hawaii, celebrating our languages and doing our dual language kind of approach and CO by literacy. I'm proud of all of that work. I'm proud of the work that we've done together for modernizing the system. There's a lot of work still to do, but I think we've delivered very boldly in the last 4 years. And, you know, when I was brought in, I was told we need bold action. That's easier to say than to do when not everyone is comfortable with changes. And I think the reality is that lots of people talk about an excellent public school system, but don't realize what it's going to take to get to excellence. And it takes hard work. And I'm excited about passing the baton on. The next leader will build on what I've done, just like I build on my predecessor. This is about making sure that this continues to be a great school system, that we get better. You know, I want the next leader to do more than I did, and so forth and so on. But our kids deserve the best education system in the world right here in Hawaii. We're the most diverse state in the nation. We have assets that other states do not have, just by virtue of how diverse and beautiful we are and the aloha that we have. And so this should be the state with the best education system in the nation. But we have a long way to go, and we need more influencers and decision makers locking arms with their superintendent and not putting up roadblocks. And I've encountered lots of roadblocks, and we still delivered on a lot of fronts, and I'm proud of that.
One final question before we go. What's next for you? Do you plan on staying here in Hawaii? And is there one piece of advice that you would give to the next superintendent in your position?
So yes, I'm staying in Hawaii. Hawaii is home. I love this place. There's a lot of work still to be done on the equity front. I will be continuing to lean in very heavily into equity of access for our children and working on gender equity in terms of women empowerment and voice. And I'm excited about the work I'm going to be doing there. My advice to the next superintendent and the leaders that follow that next superintendent is do not stop leaning in really hard and leading boldly on equity of access. Every child deserves and has a right to quality education, and there should be no child that doesn't understand clearly that pathway for success. And so I will certainly be a part of this state's work moving forward, but I am turning over the reins to someone else to continue the work in education. I've been a superintendent for 10 years across 3 districts and a deputy superintendent before that for 6 years. I'm ready to lean into another area of policy and equity where I can, I think, lead more boldly and with more support around me to change some of the trajectory of what it means to live and work and play and worship in Hawaii. And I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about being part of this community.
We have a number of comments here thanking you for the job that you've done for our kids. So thank you so much for being on here and for sharing all the information. We got a lot of practical stuff. I know a lot of parents are said like they jumped on late, so go back and watch at the beginning because we got some good information about what the school year will look like. And of course, Dr. Kishimoto, we thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Yunji. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you so much. Aloha.
And for those of you who did join in late, please do go back and watch at the beginning. She laid out a number of steps in terms of, their priorities. And it really does sound like, Ryan, they really want to push kids to try to get back into the classroom. She said they identified a number of students who really did not have the education experience over the course of the pandemic, which is totally understandable that they wanted them to have. There are some gaps in readiness, and they really want to try to elevate those students. And they think the best way to do that is to have them all in person together, wearing masks, socially distancing when possible. But it doesn't sound like, those 6 feet behind desks or in between desks and what have you, that's not going to be the case. It does sound like school will resemble more of what it looked like before the pandemic when it starts in about 5 weeks.
Yeah, and a lot to be determined still. As she said, there are still guidance that is coming down from the Department of Health and the CDC that continue to change the way in which businesses as well as educational institutions will be able to operate. And so they will continue to remain flexible in that way, being able to switch gears and change things up and accommodate some of these new rulings that could come down that may allow for maybe no mask wearing anymore in the classroom. So all of those things they are going to have to consider. And again, mind you, implement in a statewide educational system, which is challenging at times. So they are trying to basically be able to plan ahead and be flexible enough to change when those rulings do change. We also heard of some of the frustration that she had and she shared with the state legislature about the budget cuts that were made directly to the Department of Education and how it ultimately impacted the students, and that the federal funding that came down actually went for more of the infrastructure side of the overall Department of Education, not necessarily going directly to the students.
That's right. So it sounds like there's a $200 million difference right now, and that she's hoping that that money will be restored. Of course, that will be the job of the next superintendent to take on. Great to hear on her personal plans that she is going to stay in Hawaii, and she says she wants to work on equity and access. So expect to see her in the public eye. I would expect to continue to be part of the conversation about empowering women and making sure that people get the resources that they need. So always great to hear from the superintendent, a lot of information there, and a lot of you asking questions about these Department of Health requirements. So who better to ask than Dr. Livy Char, and she is joining us on Wednesday. So make sure that you tune back in here Wednesday at 10:30 because we can answer all of these questions. Of course, these decisions are being made all in tandem. So we're going straight to the top and asking Dr. Livy Char our questions. That'll be here at 10:30 on Wednesday.
We look forward to that conversation. We thank you for joining us here and starting your week out with us. We'll see you right back here on Wednesday at 10:30. Aloha.